Welcome to the pre-Fireside chat with John Love and Rashawn Scott. I'm Rashawn Scott, and that's John Love. How you feeling, John?
I'm feeling good, Rashawn. What an awesome night.
Oh my gosh, with the two of us, we helped raise $35,000. Can you believe?
We're pretty much like solely responsible for all this, I think. All this
It's a
money
lot to
made.
put on your shoulders, John, and I believe that you have the shoulders to carry that weight.
Thank you. You crushed it tonight, Rashawn. You were great.
Oh my gosh, John, you're just saying that because we got paid to do it. No, I thank you. I'll take that
What?
compliment. Now, John, we learned so much about NLEN and the good feelings that come from helping people out. What's the last good deed you did, John? To put you on
um
the spot, who have you helped out
yeah.
today?
hmm. My girlfriend. She does not have her driver's license. She can't drive. Um
I
she had to
Okay,
go to the post
and I
office
mean it's
today.
you're in Chicago, so you're not driving around in
Yes.
the snow too much. So you went to the post
Well,
office. You drove her to the post office.
yeah. Yeah, it snows. It has been snowing for days here.
Mm-hmm.
It's no end in sight. Um, but it was my car was totally packed in to the street, and so
Mm-hmm.
I spent 15-20 minutes shoveling out my car so I could drive her to the post office. That's a good deed, right?
That's an amazing deed. One, you helped someone out and you worked on your arms. You know,
Yes,
people are when
exactly.
they're exercise, they're mostly focused on the bottom, but you that shoveling technique is really going to work that top half.
This
John,
is the
that's
most
a good thing.
exercise I got in months,
The doctors say that now you only have to work out once every 6 months. You know?
and that's good. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, you know what else is amazing, John? It's time for the fireside chat. Are you
Right
excited?
on.
It's going to be
I'm
so
excited.
fun. Okay, so folks, allow me to introduce the host of our chat tonight, radio royalty from iHeartMedia Chicago, Gene Sparrow. Welcome to the NLEN VIP Fireside Chat. My name is Jean Sparrow from V103, and iHeart Chicago is a proud community partner of the North Lawndale Employment Network and Sweet Beginnings. A very special salute to Brenda Palms Barber and your team for your exceptional work and contribution to the Chicagoland community. Tonight's tea was inspiring and uplifting, and we are so happy that you are all continuing on with us to also enjoy tonight's VIP Fireside Chat. And we've got a special one for you tonight. Peter Scher and Brenda Palms Barber will reflect on corporate social justice and its role in community wealth building, and also answer questions about this evening's theme of empowerment, equity, empathy, and inclusion. It is my pleasure to share the impressive accomplishments of both of these very special people. Peter Scher is chairman of the Mid-Atlantic region, head of corporate responsibility, and serves as a member of the firm's operating committee. He serves as the firm's senior executive in the Mid-Atlantic region, which is one of the largest economic regions here in the United States. He is the chairman of the JPMorgan Chase Foundation, one of the largest corporate foundations here in the United States, and has led the development of a number of the firm's flagship programs, including the $200 million investment in Detroit's economic recovery. Peter spent nearly a decade in public service. Among several other roles, he served as U.S. Special Trade Ambassador and one of the lead U.S. negotiators on China's entry into the World Trade Organization. Brenda Palms Barber is a purpose-driven, transformational, and innovative leader, helping the most vulnerable to raise themselves to economic sustainability and reclaim their self-esteem. She is the founder, president, and CEO of the North Lawndale Employment Network and the founding social entrepreneur and CEO of Sweet Beginnings, a local honey business to create jobs. Brenda explains, as honeybees seek nectar without distinguishing between a weed or a flower, Sweet Beginnings seeks to elevate to the sweet and good and what is possible when we invest and support those who are in need. This support often leads to loyal employees, good parents, and civically engaged residents. Yes, indeed. And without further ado, we welcome Peter and Brenda.
Good evening, Peter. Congratulations once again on receiving your 2021 Voice of the Voices Award and for joining me this evening for our fireside chat. JPMorgan Chase has been a valued donor and capacity building partner to NLEN for many, many years, which includes your most recent leadership level gift of $1 million to our new workforce campus and cafe. We could not be more grateful. Thank you. Well, we can't wait to have you join us when it's safe for a delicious cup of beloved honey latte or coffee or tea, whatever your preference. We can't wait to have you at our cafe and host you.
Brenda, I can't wait to be there with you in person. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So I've been looking forward to this conversation, really engaging a socially and timely conversation with you. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who stayed in North Lawndale, said so eloquently, now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to open the doors of opportunity to all of God's children. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. 2020 and 2021 have been an especially difficult season, and we know that COVID-19 pandemic disproportionately affects Black and Brown communities from a health perspective as well as economically. In addition, our theme, Now is the Time, was inspired by the culmination of many national and local events, including the public murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and our own Laquan McDonald, and the recent and disturbing attack on the White House and democracy. And so, Peter, I know that we both agree that it's essential that we have an authentic conversation. And I'm really grateful to you, my friend, that you're willing to have this conversation with me and all of our closest friends who are joining us tonight. So, okay, let's get started. So, Peter, you serve on the operating committee for JPMorgan Chase, where you are the head of corporate responsibility and the chairman of the Mid-Atlantic region. As a workforce practitioner, one of my favorite questions I like to ask when getting to know someone is to tell me about your first job. So, what was your first job? And how did you get your first job? And what is the best lesson that you took away from that job?
So my first job, Brenda, I guess other than, mowing lawns and babysitting as a little kid, was I worked in a stationery store in my hometown. And I would go on weekends early because this is when people would actually read newspapers, and there would be big Sunday newspapers. And I'd have to put the newspapers together and sort of do the stock boy type things. And I'd have to get up really early on weekends, which was not fun for a 14-year-old kid. But what I learned was the importance of showing up on time, of being respectful of other people, of working hard, of treating others well. And I think, frankly, it's the lessons that, we take throughout our lives and are some of the most important skills that I think people need to succeed, just how you treat other people and how you commit yourself to your work and your job.
Absolutely. Lots of lessons come out of that first job. I'll have to tell you more about one of my first jobs, but it was as a receptionist at the Tacoma YMCA. And it was a job where I often got to announce driver's license on the back of a car and tell people that their lights were on. So it was fun to use the microphone and to already be of help to others. So those lessons do play out in our adult life. So thank you. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you over the past couple of years. But for those who are meeting you this evening, can you tell us a little bit more about the roles that you play as a leader at JPMorgan Chase?
So, Brenda, as you mentioned, I have a couple of roles at JPMorgan. I oversee what we call our corporate responsibility group, which is made up of all of our philanthropy. So Charlie Corrigan, who was with you earlier tonight, is in our foundation, our philanthropic group. It's people who do our government relations and regulatory work, public policy, what's now called ESG, or environmental sustainability work, and a couple of other areas. And then the other thing, as you mentioned, is I chair the Mid-Atlantic region, which is sort of everything from Virginia up north through Pennsylvania and Delaware, in terms of our businesses and our engagement with those communities. So it's a wide and interesting array of responsibilities.
It's a big job, and you seem to do it really well. So
I try.
You do. So it's important, though, that you understand that, JP Morgan Chase has actually stood by the North Lawndale Employment Network for a number of years. And so let's go back, if you would, to when you and Jamie Dimon, Whitney Smith, and several others from your team, when we first met during your visit to North Lawndale. Again, you were with a wonderful entourage, and we had a great conversation with two of our program participants, Nidhi and Javon, who were two U-turn permitted program graduates who served time behind bars in prison. They served their time and had recently completed our Moving Forward Transportation Distribution and Logistics program. And they were also hired at Chicago Transit Authority in supervisory positions. What were your impressions when you came to visit us in North Lawndale, and what did you take away?
So I remember the visit vividly. It was November of 2017. It was just a couple days before Thanksgiving, and as you said, we've been involved with North Lawndale and in other cities around the country of issues around people who had come out of the criminal justice system. But spending the time with you and with Nidhi and Javon, and my biggest impression was just the human impact of these guys who had served their time, they had paid their debts to society, they wanted to get jobs and be productive members of society, and the barriers to that were just extraordinary. And I thought about it mostly just from a human perspective. And Brenda, I was thinking about this conversation just the other night. I was anticipating this. I was watching a new documentary on CNN about Abraham Lincoln. And it's quite an interesting documentary because it is a very unvarnished look of Lincoln's life and history. And it talks about the fact that he was not always the strong opponent of slavery that he became.
Right. And
one of the historians who was talking about him said Lincoln was allowed to become the best version of himself. And I was thinking about that in the context of just thinking about our conversation. And as we sat with Nidhi and Javon, and all they wanted was to have the chance to become the best versions of themselves, not to be defined by their worst day, not to be defined by their worst mistake, certainly not to minimize what they had done, but they just wanted the chance, and it was just too hard. And it was a striking conversation because we hadn't. We weren't new to this. As you said, we've been working with you for 10 years, but it was a stark reminder. And frankly, when we left that afternoon, Jamie said, we really need to do more, which is Jamie's way of saying to me, you need to go figure out what more we can do. And so it was a very inspiring and important moment for us in the journey we've been on, not just with you in North Lawndale, but even nationally as we think about this issue.
I love that statement of the opportunity to be our better selves, and I think that that is absolutely what our work is about. People who have made some unfortunate decisions, but when people have served their time, then there should be an opportunity for them to be able to become their better selves. And I think that's what the stories that we featured tonight about, when you meet a Bernita or when you meet a Darren. So I love framing it that way, Peter. I think that's right, because There is good, our better angels. That's who we are if given the opportunity. So you had to go to work. Jamie was like, let's do something. And so that's exactly why we're here tonight. Let's talk a little bit more about why it's so fitting that JPMorgan Chase is receiving the Voice of the Voiceless Award. So Peter, under your leadership, you have led pioneering policy and have made advancements in opening pathways to employment for over 2,000 people who have served their time, who want to work, but have had difficulty securing jobs because of the stigma associated with having a record or just systemic barriers to employment. And yet, you have been able to create these pathways. JPMorgan Chase has a voice that is powerful and that carries. So can you share with us the why and the how behind JPMorgan Chase's decision to make such a public commitment to providing economic opportunities and improving policy specifically for people who have had the experience in the criminal justice system?
Brenda, I think if you, as I said, we came out there, we were visiting you in November of 2017.
Right.
And if you recall, August, just a few months earlier, was when the riots and the violence occurred in Charlottesville, Virginia. And, it was a moment in this country in which, I think we've had a lot of moments the last few years, but this was a moment in the country in which, a lot of people, both individuals and institutions were forced to do a lot of soul searching about the role that each of us played and the voice that we had in trying to address the division and the violence and the hatred in society. And one of the conversations that has gone on in the country over the last few years has been about the role of companies. And do companies need to speak out and do more? And I think part of the context for our visit to you a few months after Charlottesville was a recognition that, while we had been active in supporting efforts like North Lawndale and other similar efforts around the country, we had a chance to use our voice. Mm-hmm. And we knew that JPMorgan Chase is, it helps when your wingman is the CEO of the largest bank in the country, or maybe I was his wingman. I always get that confused. But, but there's a recognition that if JPMorgan Chase can help destigmatize, hiring and support of people with criminal records, that would be a very powerful voice. And so we made a decision to really look inward and think about what we could do with our voice and our hiring. Yeah. And we started this national second chance program. And we announced that we were going to ban the box. We were no longer going to require that people in submitting job applications tell us in advance whether or not they had criminal records, which, as you know, is a huge deterrent to people actually even seeking jobs. And we were partly, in large part, trying to tell other companies and other institutions that if one of the largest and oldest banks in the United States can do this, others can do it as well. And we were trying to destigmatize it. But we also knew that we had to, it wasn't enough just to, lend our voices, we had to walk the walk. And so, we started the Second Chance hiring program. And as you mentioned, actually, the 2,000 people was just people we hired last year in 2020. Mm. So 10% of our new hires last year were people with criminal backgrounds. And, we're all the other piece of it, and I think this is some of what Javon and Nidhi really sort of brought home, just the different barriers. We were actually precluded by federal regulation from hiring certain people with criminal backgrounds. And so Jamie said, well, let's just go get the regulations changed. Let's go to the government and let's petition to change the regulations so we're allowed. And so we became advocates to break down these barriers to hiring and retaining more people with criminal backgrounds. And that's, it was the visit with you and the moment that we were in that really inspired us to know that we had to stand up and use our voice, more loudly and more effectively.
Right. Well, I'm hoping that just this conversation is in some small way inspiring some of the folks that we have as friends that are watching to think about what it is that they can do, because it takes courage and it takes a commitment to sort of go against some of those natural systemic barriers that you ran into. What did you find? Sometimes the barriers are sort of nonsensical. They're there. Did you find that there were some barriers that just simply didn't make sense, and that you were able to sort of change policies because they just didn't make sense anymore?
100%.
Okay,
100%.
great.
I mean, even some of the regulations that we have a lot of regulations that govern banks,
Mm-hmm.
and there were regulations that allowed us to hire people with criminal backgrounds, but they were so restrictive that they didn't make any sense. I mean, if you think about some of the jobs we have in operations and computer programming, there's no reason that someone who had been in prison shouldn't do those jobs. And so there was no rationale behind it, but no one had really stepped back and said, does this make sense? And can we change it? And again, I think part of it was putting ourselves out there and saying, we want to change this. So there are, I think this is what, the people you work with, I think, tell you every day. I mean, there's federal laws, there's state laws, licensing requirements, record expungement, all of these things, individually may not be designed to impede people's opportunities, but collectively
It does.
they create this, enormous wall that it's just impossible to get over. And this is why you have to chip away. You just have to keep, you got to get a big sledgehammer and you got to keep knocking away each of these barriers to, we just worked in the state of Michigan to help pass a law for automatic expungement of records for certain qualified people. Because it used to be in some states that if you wanted to get your record expunged, you literally had to go file an individual petition, get time in court, and it was just impossible. And so we're working to get in a number of states to get automatic expungement for certain qualified individuals. So it's just this long list of barriers that just make it so difficult for people who want to be contributing parts of society to do so.
That's right. People that want to work. It's really exciting to know that you've used your sledgehammer. As we said, JPMorgan Chase, you have a big voice and you have big goals and you have big impact. And I'm encouraged, by what you're able to do. I think that it's really interesting that banking is really considered a very conservative sector. And yet you have been able to, through this second chance hiring program, hire 2,100 or more individuals. Your approach has been interesting to me, which is you're not sort of looking at a particular type of job, but basically looking at the individual's skills, talents, and their work experience and the relationship of the work to the type of crime that they have served time for. And I found that is refreshing. I also know that there's an operations component here in Chicago where folks are able to get great jobs with benefits and opportunity for advancement. To me, that's a good job. And the fact that that's happening, it's changing lives for families. And so again, that's really a big part of the reason that we were so inspired for many reasons to recognize your voice and the voice that you're using to create pathways for folks whom otherwise, I think, have very few alternatives and would find themselves making poor decisions again.
Brenda,
we applaud you for that.
You made a really important point that probably one of the problems with our entire workforce system is that too often we look at qualifications as opposed to the skills that are needed. And I'll give you a perfect example. So we have 250,000 jobs in JPMorgan Chase around the world. We did an analysis over the last couple of years. 75% of those jobs do not require 4-year college degrees. we were still asking for four-year college degrees. And so we went back and asked the question, well, why are we asking for four-year college degrees if that's not the skill set you need? And I think this is where I think we just need a whole different mindset in terms of our workforce, and focus on the skills that are needed and the potential for people, as opposed to arbitrary, in many cases, academic qualifications that really don't relate, to how qualified people are to actually do the job.
That's right. I would agree. And I think that I've also play a greater emphasis now on making sure that folks are actually aligned with the mission and aligned with our core values and our core beliefs. That's when you have employees that will really go the long way, with you, and they'll be happy to grow and gain the skill sets that they need. But are we in alignment around core values and beliefs? So I'm excited to hear that you're taking a look at those qualifications as well. So there's so much I want to get to. There's a couple more things I want to run into.
Okay, you keep going.
Last fall,
you and I can talk all night.
Last fall, JPMorgan Chase made headlines across the country and here in Chicago for making commitments to racial equity. JPMorgan Chase, you invested $40 million in Chicago's historically underserved South and West Sides. And this was in an effort to tackle the city's poverty and violence through economic growth. So the question for me, Peter, is what are you hoping to accomplish by this huge investment? And how will you do it? And what gives you hope or confidence that you're going to have the impact that you're aiming for?
So let me unpack a couple things. So, last year, as much as 2017 and Charlottesville were defining moments, I think 2020 was a defining moment for much of the country. As you talked about the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and as I mentioned in the video, the impact that we saw that COVID had on Black and Brown communities, the most vulnerable communities in the country. And I think we had a reckoning in this country last year about the slope of racial inequality, the slope of economic inequality. And it forced a lot of us to ask the question, what more can we be doing? Mm-hmm. And, Jamie asked that question again. And I think, when one of the issues that came to the forefront last year was this issue of systemic racism. And whether it is for people who are trying to get a second chance out of prison, or people who are trying to afford a home, or people who are trying to start a small business, it's just, there are too many barriers, systemic barriers, that are causing racist outcomes in this country. And so we embarked last year on a very deep effort within our company. There were probably several thousand people involved to look at how we do business. How do we do lending for mortgages? What kind of support do we give for home ownership? How do we do lending for minority small business? I mean, just across the entire company. Mm-hmm. And the end result of that was last fall when we announced a $30 billion commitment. And I will tell you, when we started that, when Jamie said, go see what more we could do, I would never have told you that we would have gotten to a point that we'd be talking about investing $30 billion. And I was worried because, as you said, banks are conservative and risk averse. So I kept waiting for someone to say, that's a lot of money, and should we really be spending it? But we had leadership that this is a moment that we have got to change the trajectory in this country. And the only way we're going to do this is when we change the systems. And some of those systems are governmental systems, but a lot of the systems are in private sector and in banks. And so we decided we had to make big commitments. And so we made a $40 million commitment to the South and West Side. We added to that, I saw Mayor Lightfoot earlier, working with her, a $600 million commitment for home ownership for Black and Latinx families just in the Chicago area. But we have got to put the muscle and the resources behind it, because I think this division and this inequality is just not sustainable for our society. And we have a role to play in addressing it.
That's right. We do. So, in this time of equity, I know that there are several corporate responsibility leaders that have joined us this evening and who are thinking seriously about becoming more intentional in their strategic and addressing issues of equity, inclusion, and empowerment and empathy. Particularly in their hiring and in their workplace culture. You've offered some great suggestions about well, a pathway, a blueprint, I like to say, for how JPMorgan Chase has approached this. But, what would you say that a corporate responsibility officer needs to think about as they want to really affect change and really take action? Because I think that I've had a lot of conversations with people, Peter, that say, what should we be doing? What can we do? How can we act? And a lot of people know that money really matters, right? When you're talking about issues around poverty. And I've had some people say, besides money, what can we do? So I'd like to get your opinion on that.
Yeah.
How much is money really the driver, and what else
Yeah.
can people do? Maybe 3 ideas.
Yeah. So money, money's, I work at a bank. Money is a lot of it, right? But it's not, it's not the starting point, and it's definitely not the only thing. I think the most important thing to do is to recognize, while there are similar problems and challenges in communities, the solutions are not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things, it was mentioned earlier, I've spent a tremendous amount of time in Detroit over the last few years as part of the revitalization there. I can't go to Detroit with New York solutions, and I can't come to Chicago with Detroit solutions. I might have ideas, but I think the most important thing that companies need to do is listen and understand, what does the community need, and how can a company help support that, both through, through money, but also there's a lot of expertise in this company. We have a program called the Service Corps, which you're familiar with. We send some of our top executives into working with nonprofits to do planning. We have a lot of data, so I think partly is thinking about what are the things that can be done. The mayor of Detroit, who's become a good friend, has said on several occasions, for all the money that we have put into Detroit, the kind of expertise and manpower have been equally important. He's been very clear. He wants the money, but it's not going to solve the problem. You
Right.
Look at a lot of these challenges. A lot of money has been put into these challenges over many years. But so listen, think about what expertise. The other big piece of this, which is really important, I think is really relevant to Chicago, is the community working together. A JPMorgan or no other, we can't come into North Lawndale and proclaim we have the answers, but the way that you collaborate with other businesses, with the community groups, with public officials, and I think the south and west sides of Chicago have been a real inspiration. You got the Emerson Project, and Arnie Duncan is doing fabulous work there, and the Obama Foundation, and the city, and AT&T, and Walmart. There's a lot of collaboration and effort. And that's what we look for. And I will tell you, there are a lot of places that doesn't happen. And those are places we just don't invest. We can't spend our time putting money into places in which people are not working together and focused on outcomes. And so those are kind of 3 things. Listen, it's more than money, and you got to have collaboration.
Great suggestions. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. Even this evening, we recognized AT&T for their partner award. And one of the reasons that we were so inspired to recognize them, particularly Eileen Mitchell, is her ability to listen. It was, she did not come in with her preconceived notion about how to fix things. She may have, but she certainly physically, with her full self, listened to the work that we were doing and decided to partner with us, and we to partner with them, rather than trying to fit another agenda into something that really wasn't in our strategic objective or vision. And so I think that's so important that you mentioned that, Peter, the importance of listening, the importance of collaboration, and investing. That's how we make change. So thank you for those So in closing, I can't believe how fast this has gone. I want more time. I want more time. But in closing, we know that JPMorgan Chase is not shy about taking bold steps for bold change. What's next for JPMorgan Chase?
Well, we still got a lot of we need more sledgehammers because we still have very high walls, right? And so we are, we've got systems in this country that have been built up over a long time, and so we have to keep at knocking them down. I think, and so we're very determined to stay focused and really deepen our impact in places like Chicago and other cities, not just around the country, around the world. But I think the other big thing is I think we really have to get the right policies, public policies in place. Government can't do it alone, but there's a really important role for government here. And as I talked about we talked about in terms of criminal justice reform, but when we talk about affordable housing and we talk about small business lending and we talk about wealth creation, there are public policies that both inhibit the opportunity, but also can create greater opportunities. And so we're putting a lot of time working with people like Mayor Lightfoot and Governor Pritzker and the Biden administration and people in Congress and, whoever is willing to work with us to really develop policy solutions that help scale efforts. I mean, I'll just give you one example. One of the big things we were involved in last year, which I think is important to your work, is restoring Pell Grant funding for people who were still in prison. I mean, for since 1994, for 26 years, people who were in prison who wanted to get post-secondary education couldn't get access to it. You talk about things that are not rational. You want people coming out of prison who've served their time to have the as much preparation for the workforce. So we spent a tremendous amount of time last year pushing in Congress to restore funding, Pell Grant funding for people who are in prison, and we succeeded in that. Those are the types of things that public policy can do to make an enormous difference, and that's what we're going to focus on. That, and trying to find more Brenda Palmers to work with to make the type of difference and impact in the communities that we see you making every day.
Well, I'm excited about the Pell Grant efforts because that is so key. It is, so folks can reintegrate back into society and work and earn a middle wage job. If you've served your time for your crime, then you've served your time. And I think that we're slowly moving toward a society that understands that, people make mistakes and that, your worst mistake in life doesn't mean that's who you are for the rest of your life. It was a moment. And so we have to help one another. And so I really appreciate that work. And whatever I can do to continue to support the work that you're doing here in Chicago, you have a friend, you have a friend in me. And I'm really proud of the practitioner work that I get to do and to do it with great partners like JPMorgan Chase, like AT&T, Wintrust, which is a local partner of ours. We're excited about the kind of partnerships that we're fostering. So I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, Peter. Your joy and your passion for this work is infectious. And that's why I think that you're able to manage these multiple roles that you play, because you really are all in with your heart and a great mind. So with that, I'd like to hope that the folks that are listening have the ability to take away some of the lessons that you've shared and to take those ideas and convert them into action. That's what we hope. You've created a beautiful blueprint for that. And so for that, I want to say thank you with my whole heart. You're sweeter than honey. And thank you again, Peter, for your support of Sweet Beginnings, your support of our new wonderful campus, and for creating pathways, to a respectable income for people that have served time. Congratulations again on your
Brenda,
Voice of
thank
the
you.
Voiceless
I mean,
Award.
I'm deeply honored. I've gotten to know you so well, and I think, as we said earlier, this country, we have to be about redemption, and we have to be
Yes.
about all of us just getting the opportunity to be the best versions of ourselves, and you've helped us become the best version of ourselves. So I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, the best version. So, well, listen, we'll see you in Chicago.
Okay.
We'll have that latte, so get ready for that.
I'm
And
ready.
thanks again. Have a
All
great
right.
evening. Good
Brenda,
night.
thank you. Good luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for celebrating the Sweet Beginnings Tea with us today. My name is Michael McAfee. I'm the president and CEO of PolicyLink and honored to serve on the board of the North Lawndale Employment Network. PolicyLink recently released reports as part of the Advancing Workplace Equity Project. It's funded by JPMorgan Chase. In the reports, we highlight a few things. Amid rising inequality and an uncertain future, when it comes to good jobs, it is time for bold, transformative strategies to achieve economic security and dignity for all. I want you to imagine a world where everyone who wants to work has a living wage job. A world where no one needs to cobble together jobs to make ends meet. Joblessness and its consequences no longer exist. Millions are working together to heal our environment and rebuild our physical and care infrastructure, and the basic right to a job is guaranteed. Thankfully, North Lawndale Employment Network is leading the way. They are committed to the following core values. Neighborhood-focused employment initiatives are fundamental. Quality of work matters. Economic mobility is essential to reducing poverty. Addressing the racial wealth gap and social inequality is critical, and everyone deserves human dignity and empowerment. Because of your support of NLEN, the world that we just imagined together is within reach for the North Lawndale community. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda and Peter, for that incredible conversation. We learned so much from you this evening, and thank you to all of you who joined us. We look forward to being together with you next year. And remember, now is the time. In the meantime, please stay healthy and safe. I've been Rashawn Nadine Scott. Thank you so much. Good night.